The year is 1260, and the medieval world is trembling. From the high steppe of Mongolia, a force has emerged that seems less like an army and more like an elemental disaster. They call it the Iron Radiance, a war machine that has already turned the Tigris black with the ink of Baghdad's libraries and the Euphrates red with the blood of its citizens. The Butcher of Baghdad, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, has turned his cold, calculating gaze toward the Levant. Syria is his next target, and beyond it, the jewel of the Nile, Egypt. In the path of this storm stands Sultan al-Nasir Yusuf of the Ayyubid dynasty. He is a man caught between the glory of his ancestor, Saladin, and the terrifying reality of the present. Hulagu sends his envoys with a simple, brutal ultimatum: destroy your fortresses and submit to the great Khan, or suffer a wrath that knows no tears. In the Sultan's court, voices whisper of surrender. But one man stands apart. He is a hardened warrior from the Egyptian frontier, his eyes silvered by a cataract, but his vision sharper than any king's. His name is Baybars. Baybars beseeches the Sultan to rally his armies and meet the Mongols in the open field. He warns that stone walls are no protection against Mongol siege engines. To hide behind a gate is merely to choose the location of your own grave. But the Sultan disregards him. Hubris is a fatal counselor. Frustrated and sensing the impending doom, Baybars gathers his loyal followers and flees Syria, leaving the Ayyubids to their fate. Death arrives in early 1260. The Mongols breach the walls of Aleppo in a single week. From the high citadel, the defenders are forced to watch the industrial-scale massacre of their people. When the garrison eventually surrenders under a promise of amnesty, Hulagu, in a fit of extreme rage, orders every man, woman, and child executed. Damascus, seeing the smoke of Aleppo on the horizon, surrenders without a fight. In a single season, the 500-year-old Ayyubid dynasty is erased from the map. The Mongols have reached the Mediterranean. Only the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt remains. To Hulagu, the Mamluks are nothing more than slave soldiers, men bought and sold in the markets of the north. He sends a message to Sultan Qutuz in Cairo, dripping with divine arrogance. We are the soldiers of God on earth, created in his anger to purify the world of disorders. Commit your faith to us before the veil is torn. But the Mongols have miscalculated. The Mamluks were indeed slaves, but they were slaves forged into the most elite caste of warriors the world had ever seen. They were Kipchak Turks, taken as boys, converted to Islam, and relentlessly drilled in horse archery, melee combat, and iron discipline. They did not fear the steppe, they were born of it. Qutuz's response is a thunderclap that echoes through history. He does not send a letter. He executes the 4 Mongol envoys and hangs their heads from the Bab Zawela gate in Cairo. The message is clear: Egypt will not be taken. Egypt will fight. In September 1260, at the spring of Ein Jalut, the spring of Goliath, the shadow of the Mongol Empire finally meets the iron of the Mamluks. The battle is a visceral nightmare of screaming men and clashing steel. The Mongols launch a devastating heavy cavalry charge that nearly breaks the Mamluk center. In the chaos, Qutuz throws his helmet to the ground, his face exposed to the arrows, and roars, "O Islam! O Islam!" This rallying cry stabilizes the line. The Mamluks, clad in heavy lamellar armor, launch a counterattack that swarms the Mongol flank. Kitbuka, the veteran of 100 conquests, is overrun and beheaded. For the first time in history, a Mongol advance is not just delayed, it is shattered. The myth of Mongol invincibility is drowned in the blood of Galilee. But victory in the Mamluk world is a double-edged sword. On the journey back to Cairo, Baybars, the man who warned of the Mongol storm, decides it is time for a new lion to lead. He seizes Qutuz's hand in a gesture of friendship, then draws his blade and strikes him down. The slave has become the Sultan. Baybars knows that the Mongols do not forgive. He spends the next 17 years transforming Egypt into a specialized war machine. He builds the Barid, a sophisticated intelligence network of signal towers and messenger pigeons that can relay a warning from the Euphrates to Cairo in less than 4 days. He builds bridges, improves roads, and secures the slave trade from the Golden Horde to ensure his regiments are always full of fresh, elite recruits. He is a master of the shadow war. When the Mongol Ilkhanate attempts to ally with the Crusaders of the West, Baybars strikes first. He dismantles Crusader beachheads like Antioch and Caesarea. When the future King Edward I of England arrives with a small force, Baybars allegedly employs a Nizari assassin to strike him with a poisoned dagger, forcing the English prince to abandon the crusade and return home. The Mongol Empire is now fracturing. In the north, Berk Khan of the Golden Horde has converted to Islam. He is horrified by Hulagu's destruction of Baghdad. Mongol begins to kill Mongol. Baybars shrewdly forges an alliance with Berk, forcing the Ilkhanate to fight on two fronts. The Iron Radiance is being squeezed by its own kin. In 1277, an aging Baybars leads one final, legendary campaign into Anatolia. At the Battle of Elbistan, he meets a Mongol-led force that nearly breaks his flank with a terrifying onslaught of arrows. Baybars personally leads his reserve, the elite garrison of Hama, into the eye of the storm. The fighting is so savage that the Mongols, unable to access fresh horses, dismount and fight to the death on foot. The Mamluks emerge victorious, but Baybars does not celebrate with the traditional drums of war. He is shaken. He tells his men, "I met 7,000 Mongols with all my army, and they almost defeated us. Without Allah's grace, the Sultanate would have fallen." Baybars dies later that year, but his spirit is inherited by Sultan Kalawan. The Mongols make their final, greatest bid for the Nile in 1281. Under the inexperienced Prince Monk Timur, a coalition of 50,000 Mongols, Georgians, Armenians, and Knights Hospitaller marches on Homs. The Second Battle of Homs is a collision of staggering proportions. The front stretches over 24 kilometers. The Mongol right wing, under a commander named Alanak, smashes the Mamluk left and begins a pursuit. But Alanak makes a fatal mistake. He chases the survivors for miles, losing contact with his own center. Kalawan, watching from a hidden hill, sees the gap. He launches his reserve. In the ensuing melee, Monk Timur is wounded and falls from his horse. Panic spreads through the Mongol ranks like a plague. The retreat becomes a massacre. More Mongols drown in the Euphrates or perish in the desert than died on the field of battle. The Mongol threat to Egypt is effectively over. In the years that follow, the Ilkhanate plunges into succession crises and internal revolts. But the Mamluks aren't finished. With the Mongols neutralized, they turn their full wrath toward the remaining Crusader kingdoms, the beachheads of the West. Tripoli falls in 1289. Then, in 1291, the final fortress of Acre is taken. 200 years of Crusader history is ended in a single generation of Mamluk fire. However, the Mongol spirit has one last flicker. In 1299, Ghazan Khan, a convert to Islam, attempts to reclaim the glory of his ancestors. He is a brilliant strategist. He outflanks the Mamluk trap of Homs by crossing the Syrian desert, catching the Mamluk army exhausted and unready. He wins a crushing victory at Wadi al-Khaznadar and takes Damascus. For a brief, terrifying moment, the Mamluk Sultanate teeters on the edge of extinction. Mongol scouts reach the gates of Jerusalem. But the geography of the Levant is a cruel mistress. Whether due to internal threats in the east or a lack of grass for his massive horse herds, Ghazan abruptly withdraws. The Mamluks retake Syria in weeks. It was the Mongols' last, best chance to destroy the Iron Rampart. By the early 14th century, the Iron Radiance had finally faded. The subsequent Mongol attacks were defeated not by great kings, but by the stiff resistance of ordinary townspeople and the heavy winter rains that turned the earth to mud. The Ilkhanate disintegrated into a collection of minor warlords, leaving a power vacuum in Anatolia. From this vacuum, a small tribe led by a man named Osman began to rise. The Mongol storm had passed, leaving behind the seeds of the Ottoman Empire. The Mongols had conquered almost the entire world. They had met the knights of Europe, the samurai of Japan, and the emperors of China. But in the sands of the Levant, they met the Mamluks, men who were born in the shadow of the steppe, raised in the light of the prophet, and forged in the fire of slavery. The Mamluks did not just hold the line, they became the line. As Berk Khan once lamented while looking over a field of his fallen kin, Mongols are killed by Mongol swords. If we were united, we would have conquered all of the world. But the world was not to be theirs. The Iron Radiance was gone. The Iron Rampart remained.